Hello everyone, and thank you for attending this Belzona Solve It session webinar on barrier coatings for chemical attack. You have two Toms taking care of today's presentation. So I'm Tom Belli from Belzona's marketing team.
And I'm Tom Martin from the global support team.
So hopefully that just makes it a bit easier directing your questions to us. Obviously just one name to remember, which is handy. So what will be on the agenda for today's session? We're going to break it into two sections, a 20-minute presentation covering all of the topics that you can see on the screen, and then following that we'll have a 10-minute Q&A session. So this is where we'll address any of the questions that you've raised during this webinar. Now, as a quick reminder, you can ask your questions in the comments section, which some of you have been typing in already, or you can send one privately to the presenters, which you can find that at the top of your screens. But yeah, feel free to ask away and we'll cover these at the end. So I'll just hand you over to Tom, who's going to begin the presentation.
Okay, so just to set the scene for the topic of chemical attack, on almost every industrial site we are likely to find some hazardous chemicals. In many cases these will also be corrosive. So without the proper mitigation of the effects of the chemically induced corrosion, assets such as pipelines, storage tanks and process vessels can degrade. This eventually could lead to leakage. This can introduce environmental issues and endanger personnel, so obviously it's something that we want to avoid. It is therefore paramount that asset owners take preventative steps to reduce the chances of leaking and implement backup systems to contain any spillages that do happen. Okay, so before deciding on the best strategy to deal with this problem, it's important to understand the potential severity of the risk, i.e. how aggressive the chemical is. So there's two factors that determine how aggressive any given chemical will be, and those are the concentration and the temperature. So in the most aggressive scenarios will be where we have corrosive chemicals, highly concentrated, in constant contact with an asset. Okay, so that's the exposure time, and the type of contact with the substrate or the asset is also a critical part. So is it in constant immersion? Is it incidental contact from splashing or spillage, for example? Okay, and there are some external factors such as flowing fluids or abrasive particles that you might find in something like a pipeline system that can also introduce additional wear mechanisms. When combined with chemical attack, these additional wear mechanisms can significantly increase the potential for rapid failure. Okay, so there are many different options available on the market to protect from chemical attack, all with their own merits and potential drawbacks. Polymer coatings are a popular choice across industry due to the ease of application and maintenance, both at the new fabrication stage or in situ for existing equipment. There are a wide variety of coatings available on the market, which is good for asset owners as it allows them to select an option that is optimized for their specific requirements. While it could be an advantage, the wide variety of coatings also introduces some danger, a little bit of a risk for asset owners, due to the potential for improper product selection. So that's our challenge. That's the challenge for Belzona as a coating manufacturer, is to ensure that asset owners receive technical support, both during the material selection phase all the way to the installation and inspection. That way we can ensure that performance expectations will be met. Okay, so I'll now hand you back over to Tom, who will talk a little bit about the Belzona coating range.
Okay, thank you there, Tom. So as you mentioned, the correct selection is hugely important when it comes to protective coatings, matching the solution to the unique conditions of each environment. Based on their capabilities, Belzona's chemical-resistant coatings can be separated into three categories. And first up, we have scenarios involving continuous immersion at ambient temperatures. This encompasses some of Belzona's 1300 and 5800 series. The range shown here can all be used in environments operating up to 60 degrees Celsius, which is 140 degrees Fahrenheit, with some key examples highlighted below where they have proven effective. Now, as with the majority of these coatings, they are capable of withstanding the harsh effects of erosion and corrosion for the long term. So pumps make excellent examples where these solutions have been utilised. As the severity of chemical attack increases with temperature, Belzona's resistant coatings are able to withstand the test. So all of the range you see here are capable of operating at elevated temperatures, specifically over 95 degrees Celsius, and in some cases up to 160 degrees Celsius, which is 320 degrees Fahrenheit. These are ideally suited for processing environments. Conditions, for example, you would expect to see in flare drums or desalters within the oil and gas industry. As the pictures point out as well, these have been successfully used for this type of equipment for a number of years and have in fact been included in specifications for a number of major companies. Now this moves us on to Belzona's dedicated range of chemical-resistant coatings, acting as barriers to aggressive acids and alkalis found throughout industries. The 4300 range can accommodate for highly concentrated solutions, including sulfuric acid, which is highlighted in the instances below for the bund and the offloading zone. Now, I know that we've covered a number of products showcased in all three of these categories, and that can be a little bit overwhelming. So especially because each of them have their own specific traits, it would take a long time to cover everything. So for the remainder of this presentation, we would like to focus on perhaps Belzona's most versatile chemical resistant coating, and that is Belzona 4311. Now, as I mentioned, this coating is extremely versatile and is suitable for application onto a wide variety of assets, including instances of both primary and secondary containment. This wouldn't be possible, of course, without its excellent chemical resistance. All of Belzona's materials undergo extensive testing, and Belzona 4311 is no different. In fact, prior to release, it is subject to 12 months of testing compliant with international standards. And on top of this, it's coupled with over 30 years of proven experience in the field in all manner of environments. Ease of application is fundamental to any protective material, with Belzona 4311 benefiting from being cold curing without the need for any specialist equipment. In addition, it is solvent-free, and this aids the application in confined spaces, as well as ensuring there is no shrinkage or distortion due to the evaporating solvents that come off of it. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, it sticks. So whether it is a porous substrate like concrete or non-porous metalwork, it demonstrates excellent adhesion to a wide variety of substrates. So Tom's going to cover a few of these examples now and how they fared in service.
Okay, so as Tom mentioned, the chemical resistant coating Belzona 4311 has been proven in service throughout many industries over 30 years. During that time, hundreds of applications have taken place, but we wanted to show you a snapshot of those from the most troublesome, difficult environments. So the first case is from this chemical plant, and it's a chemical channel, funnily enough. So this was getting regular contact with 98% sulfuric acid. And what was happening is that it was eating away at the concrete. Now, the asset owner had tried numerous different coatings prior to the Belzona coating, none of which were able to withstand the sulfuric acid for any prolonged period of time, and they were breaking down, and continually the concrete was becoming more and more deteriorated. So eventually the asset owner got in contact with Belzona, and we were able to clean the concrete, repair the concrete back to its original dimensions using our concrete repair materials, and then overcoat the concrete with the Belzona 4311 for further protection. This has now proven to be a much longer lasting solution than the previous solutions tried by the asset owner. Okay, so just to show the flexibility of the product in terms of the range of applications that it can be used for, we're going from a concrete application now to a metallic component. So this screw auger at a pulp and paper plant was subject to not only heavy chemical attack, but also from abrasion. So the asset owner was replacing the equipment quite regularly, and this was quite a costly exercise, and not just in terms of the capital cost of the equipment itself, but also the downtime and the maintenance required was unsuitable. Okay, so what they did is they combined Belzona 4311 with another Belzona product called 1811, which is a highly abrasion-resistant coating. They then put a top coat of 4311 to add the chemical resistance, and this application was still in service 8 years later. So what it did is allowed for the asset owner to get extended service life out of the screw, which reduced their maintenance requirements and saved them a lot of capital cost on replacing the equipment. Okay, so here's the third example. This one was a bund area for some pumps carrying sulfuric acid. So what had happened is the pumps had leaked and damaged some of the concrete on the plinth, on the base supporting the pumps. Due to the vibrations of the pumps, the damage was actually propagating and becoming worse. So before it got to the stage where they needed to do some serious reparation that would require structurally repairing the concrete, what they did is repaired it with the Belzona solution, with the Belzona paste grades just to reinforce the plinths, and then they applied the Belzona 4311 coating to give the chemical protection to prevent any further damage. Okay, and our final example is a vertical pump, which was pumping 93% sulfuric acid. So again, a very, very aggressive situation. So you've got a little bit of erosion here as well as the chemical attack. Initially, the asset owner didn't really believe that a coating could withstand this kind of environment. So they trialed the application on only one of their pumps, on the impeller and also on the volute areas. After I think it was 3 or 4 years in service, it was revisited, and the coating was still in very good condition. So the asset owner was happy with that and decided to coat another 5 pumps. These were again revisited a number of years later and found to be still in very good condition. So now I'm just going to hand you back over to Tom, who's going to talk about the latest updates in the Belzona 4311 product.
Okay, cheers for that, Tom. So, made clear by that selection of case studies, Belzona 4311 has a proven track record in the field, but there is always room for improvement. So Belzona's R&D team have been hard at work, working their magic, and we would like to unveil the enhanced formulation of this material with some notable key differences and benefits even, sorry. So now we're going to share with you a short video introducing these further. So I'm just going to stop sharing the screen and commence with the video.
Chemical attack affects numerous industries. Whether it's long-term exposure or just incidental contact, insufficient protection can have serious consequences, not only for the asset, but the environment too. Protective coatings serve to eliminate these hazards, and for over 30 years, Belzona 4311 has excelled as a versatile solution to combat chemical attack. As a final defense, secondary containment areas are prone to chemical contact and require outstanding protection. Belzona 4311 is ideally suited to these environments. Creating a resistant barrier, this coating withstands a broad range of chemicals found throughout many different industries. What's more, Belzona 4311 is easy to use. Its compatibility with spray equipment makes installation even quicker, especially over large areas. Whilst more detailed work can still benefit from the material being hand applied. An enhanced overcoat window also contributes to the ease of application. On closer inspection, Belzona's superior polymer matrix restricts the migration of amine molecules to the surface. Whilst amine bloom can narrow the overcoat window of other coatings, Belzona 4311 remains primed for up to 24 hours, aiding working flexibility and better planning. Lasting protection is essential for any chemical-resistant coating, yet exposure to UV can compromise performance over time. Other coatings can deteriorate substantially under these conditions, impacting their ability to repel chemical attack, whilst diminishing their coating thickness. However, heightened UV resistance ensures the retention of Belzona's protective properties for the long term. Together, these application and performance benefits make Belzona 4311 the complete solution, and not just for secondary containment areas, but throughout a variety of industrial environments. This chemical-resistant coating continues to provide exceptional long-term protection. Visit belzona.com for more information.
So, as the video alluded to, the addition of being sprayable is one of the application upgrades for this system. Formerly, it was just hand applied, but now it can be compatible with airless, single and plural spray equipment, which aids faster application, especially over large areas. Now, this goes hand in hand with the coating having an increased overcoat window. So it's been extended up to 24 hours and will not experience any of the negative effects associated with amine bloom, such as the loss of intercoat adhesion seen on standard epoxy coatings. And overall, this just aids a fast back to service time. Finally, we have the UV resistance of Belzona 4311, which has been enhanced even further. As we mentioned before, extensive testing is a priority for Belzona, and this coating was subjected to 10,000 hours in an accelerated weathering test, with the coating thickness barely affected. So in sunny climes where there are high levels of UV exposure, you can be assured that the chemical resistance of the coating will be uncompromised. Now I'm going to hand you back over to Tom just to give you a bit of a summary on the product benefits.
Okay, so as Tom mentioned, this is just a quick summary of some of the benefits of the Belzona materials. This applies to all of the coatings that you've seen featured in this webinar today, not just the 4311, but the other coatings that have been mentioned too. So firstly, the cold curing and solvent-free nature of the materials not only makes them safer to use, but also aids the application, as there's no shrinkage or distortion of the material during curing. All of the coatings cure with a wide application window and no external heat is required. In terms of performance, all the materials we've shown today exhibit extremely high adhesion to various substrates, whether it's a metallic or a cementous concrete type substrate. And of course, there are way more products that we can go into detail about today. We don't have time to talk about everything, but as you may have seen, the Belzona products are suited to a wide variety of conditions. Overall, they give long-term performance, and this is backed up and proven with our case histories.
Okay, so thank you there, Tom. Earlier on in this presentation, Tom covered the key criteria for evaluating chemical attack, which is something that Belzona can provide technical support with due to its worldwide reach. Along with the head offices, which you can see in yellow on that map, we have a network of over 140 distributors in over 120 countries, offering local service and support wherever it is required. So if any of the coatings mentioned during this webinar have caught the eye for protecting your assets, Belzona will be able to assist you wherever you are across the globe. And this is made even easier when you visit belzona.com's website, where you'll be able to use the Find a Distributor feature, and you can use this to get in touch with your local representative in your own country. So that brings us to the end of today's Solve It session webinar, and we'd like to thank you all for watching. We're now going to enter into the Q&A section, in which we'll answer any of the questions you'd have. So I'd like to bring back in Tom, and we'll also like to introduce Henry Smith, Belzona's Engineering Services Supervisor, who will assist with answering these questions. Hi, Henry.
Good morning, everybody, / afternoon.
Cool. I'll stop sharing the presentation so you can see them both clearly. So, yeah, do we have any questions from anyone in the audience at all? We do have one that was asked. So, does it have the same chemical resistance as the former version of Belzona 4311, the new formulation?
So it's very, very similar in terms of the chemical resistance from the previous formulation. In the majority of cases, it's either the same or improved chemical resistance. What we have added to the chemical resistance, and you can find this on the chemical resistance charts, which are accessible through our website, is that we've not only tested this version at 20 degrees, but also at 40 degrees C as well. So for hotter climates, it's possible to check that the product is suitable for those conditions as well as in cooler climates.
Okay, hopefully that helps answer your question. We also have another here. What would be your product line for immersion service tanks? Immersion in tanks?
Yeah, it's quite general. Normally we need quite specific details, but you could use 4311, you could use 5811. There's the 1500 series for high temperatures, there's 1300s for erosion. It depends entirely on the application you're looking at. So like the slide Tom mentioned earlier on about the concentration, the temperature, how long it's in immersion for, that sort of thing. If we get that information, then we can give you something more specific, but you could use 4311, you could use one of the many other Belzona coatings in an immersion service inside a tank if you wanted to.
I think the best thing to do would be to get in touch with your local Belzona representative or with Belzona directly. And if you can give us the service conditions, so as Henry mentioned, the temperature, the chemical that's being contained, and things like pressure and the substrate material, then we will be able to recommend the best coating for those particular conditions.
Hopefully that helped answer that question. Kerry says, what is involved with the surface preparation when dealing with these harsh chemicals? I guess it's dependent on the substrate, predominantly. That.
Yeah. It depends entirely on, like Tom says, it depends entirely on the substrate. So onto steel, it's really important to make sure that you get rid of as much of those harsh chemicals as possible. We want it to have an intimate bond between the Belzona and the steel, and there's nothing in between to stop it from sticking. When it comes to something like concretes, maybe you're doing a bund area, it's really important to make sure that top layer of concrete might be perfectly clean, but a couple of inches down, it may need a bit of cleaning, some steam cleaning, jet washing, that sort of thing, to remove those nasty chemicals before you then put the Belzona on.
Okay, we'll move on to our next one from John Paul from Berlin. So how does this coating perform at high concentrations of sulfuric acid and hydrochloric acids as well?
I think we're referring to the Belzona 4311 here, and the Belzona 4311 has excellent resistance to 98% sulfuric acid in constant immersion and up to 36% hydrochloric acid in constant immersion at ambient temperatures. If we're at elevated temperatures, then we'll move on to our high temperature chemical resistant coating, which has very good resistance up to around anywhere from 60 to 90 degrees, depending on the exact concentration.
Okay. Vincenzo has asked about the possibility to overcoat with other products, and why the need for this would be, and whether the coating is modified at all.
Well, it depends entirely on what the client wants. Generally, just the 4311 on its own, if you're looking at chemical resistance at lower ambient temperatures, then 4311 is the way to go. You wouldn't need to add anything on top. There is the possibility to overcoat with other products. I haven't seen it personally, but I'm sure in certain circumstances this is necessary, maybe for color correction or something like that. But then you're not getting the base layer of the 4311. So in most cases, 99% of the time, it will just be the 4311 on its own. But you can overcoat with other products should it be required in the future.
Okay, Vincenzo also added another to that. If applied to mechanical parts like pipes and vessels or tanks, is SA 2.5 good enough in terms of surface preparation?
Yes. So for constant immersion, SA 2.5 and a minimum average surface profile of 75 microns is the standard that we recommend.
Okay. We also have a question with regards to whether it is fireproof.
Testing hasn't been performed for the material in terms of how fireproof it is or what its resistance to fire is. If there was enough of a reason for us to go and look into that, then it could be done. But as far as I'm aware, that's not something that's on the table at the moment, this moment in time. But it could be looked into in the future.
Jean-Louis has a question, quite a specific one, I think, with regards to an application. Looking for a solution to repair a pipe coming out from heater turbine, outside temperature between 400 and 500 degrees Celsius. I think they're looking at a metallic patch to cover the hole, and then what product would be appropriate for?
So 400 or 500 degrees C is way too high for the Belzona materials. In immersed conditions, our maximum is 160. In dry conditions, you could probably get up to around 200 or 220. But yeah, 400, 500 degrees is too high.
Okay. Sorry, we couldn't help you a bit further there, Jean-Louis. Brandon has a question, what temperatures would be the best to spray at? And do you have to pre-mix Belzona 4311 before spraying?
So we've tried spraying the Belzona 4311 at temperatures down to around 8 degrees C. It was quite difficult at that temperature, so we do recommend that 15 degrees C is a good temperature to spray at, and anywhere up to 40 degrees C is also a good is fine in that window. We do heat trace the spray lines as well, but in terms of ambient temperature, it's going to be sort of above 10, 15 degrees and below 40 degrees C. So what was the other part of that question?
It's about the substrate temperature should be, we recommend 15, but it can go lower if necessary. If you're wanting to know the temperature to actually spray the product at, so the product temperature we heat it up to, usually it's 50, 60 degrees, but that can vary depending on the climate, where you're spraying, how much you're spraying. There's a lot of variables that go into it. But again, if you contact us after this webinar, we can give you all the information and the specification for spraying the material as well.
I think the second part to that question was, does it need to be pre-mixed? The answer is no, you can use a plural spray pump.
Laszlo had a question regarding, I think it's going back to one of the case histories about the pulp and paper plant with the screw auger and the mixture of 4311 with 1811. Okay,
so what they did is actually applied the 1811 first and then overcoated it with 4311. So they applied the 1811 as per the instructions for use, which I think is a few millimeters thick. And then they applied the 4311, just a thin layer over the top, and that just gives it a little additional chemical resistance.
Okay. Ottavio had a question regarding the cure speed. Can it be accelerated, or well, how fast does it cure? But can it be accelerated without decreasing the performance?
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head what the cure time is for the product specifically. But if you check the instructions for use for that product, it will tell you exactly at what temperature, how fast we can expect the material to cure. Now, in terms of accelerating the cure, you can force cure the material, which basically means you add heat to the material, and the hotter it is, up to that 40 degrees that Tom mentioned earlier, the quicker the product cures. And because it cures via an exotherm, the more heat you put into it, the stronger it gets. So that force cure also gives it a post cure. So technically, you're making it better by adding some heat to it. But again, 40 degrees maximum is all we're recommending for that. So if you wanted to make it faster, you can always add more heat to it.
Okay. Vincenzo, which is the minimum DFT it's possible to reach with 4311?
The recommended thickness, I believe, is 750 microns.
Yeah, there or thereabouts for the two-coat.
For a two-coat system, it's around 750 microns, I believe. I'm not 100% sure, but it's in that region. And you'd apply it as two coats of 350 to 375 microns, and that's the minimum. The maximum is only limited by sag resistance, so the point at which the product starts to sag up due to being too thick.
Okay, Vincenzo has a couple more questions, I think. They were looking at suggesting suggesting an application for an underground pipe. Would 4311 be suitable for that, or would you be looking at another coating perhaps?
I'm presuming if it's to do with an underground pipe, then it's probably going on the outside. Otherwise, it wouldn't make a difference where the pipe is. In terms of, you have things like soil erosion and things like that, so you maybe look at a different product, something which has some sort of level of erosion resistance. But again, every application is completely different, so that's something we'd have to consider, like on a case-by-case basis. So again, if you send us the details or send your local distributor the details, then they can quite happily look into it for you. But you could possibly use 4311 if you wanted to.
Laszlo, I think your question with regards to surface prep, we kind of covered it a little bit before, but I guess it's completely dependent again on what the surface is, so whether it is concrete or whether it's metal. I don't think there's anything more that we can offer to that unless we had more details, unfortunately.
Yeah, I suppose the only thing to say is if it is a metallic substrate, for example in a tank, then you would be looking at grit blasting as the surface preparation method. On concrete, you would typically just you could grit blast, or you could use UHP, water jetting, you can use scrabblers, or you can use mechanical tools on concrete. It's not as critical.
It's a bit easier to get the roughness on the concrete as it is opposed onto steel or stainless or cast iron, that sort of thing.
Okay, well, hopefully that's helped to answer a lot of the questions that you guys have had. Please feel free if you do have any more. Oh wait, we do have one more from Brock. So I think he's wondering whether 4311 can be used for plate bonding via injection.
Yes, it could be, if there was the need for the actual 4311. In most cases, when you're doing an injection bond, you're not going to need the chemical resistance of 4311. You might do in certain situations, but most times you won't. So you would use something like 5811 just because it's more cost effective. But the 4311 could be injected if you needed the chemical resistance properties.
Can aggregate be added for slip resistance? From Damien.
Yes, so what I would recommend doing is applying 1 or 2 coats of 4311 first, and then adding the aggregate into either mixing it in with the final layer or just sprinkling it on top of the final layer and pushing it in with some wooden boards or something.
If you're looking for any more information on top of that, we have a lot of know-how and actions where slip-resistant walkways and chemical-resistant areas such as bunds have been implemented. So if you go to khia.belzona.com, you'll be able to find a lot of our case studies. And if you search for Belzona 4311 and also use aggregate as a search term, you should be able to find some instances where that's been done. But certainly, like Tom said, that's possible. Okay, well, if that's all for the questions for today, then like I said, please feel free to send them across in an email. But we also have a questionnaire at the end of this webinar, so if you do have any feedback or have any further questions, please fill that in, just so then we can make sure that we're able to provide these webinars at a high quality for you next time as well, and make any improvements you think are necessary. So yeah, that just leaves us to say thanks you very much for attending, and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.